Welcome to the Cosmic Connection. What you're about to hear and see on this program may disturb you. Please keep an open mind, for you may find that the information disseminated on the Cosmic Connection different from anything in your past experience. The views and opinions on the Cosmic Connection are not necessarily those of the organization broadcasting this program. Neither are they the views of the government, which seeks to suppress the investigation of the subject of unidentified flying objects. These are not the opinions of hucksters and charlatans who co-opt the importance of this message by their vain attempts to rip off the public through fear and misinformation. The term which best describes this program is from the Latin, fiat lux, which means, let there be light.
And welcome to the Cosmic Connection. I am your host, the Cosmic Connector. Go to UFOs in the DMZ. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're going up country. We're going to hit the DMZ. We're going to Vietnam, 1966. My guest today is Mr. Ron Hayes. He is not afraid to hide his name. He has a story for us, ladies and gentlemen, that is outstanding. Now, I have been very interested in UFO sightings during battlefield conflicts, and the one that has caught my attention over the past years in my looking over ufology and all the aspects that it brings to it is that Vietnam was not talked about a whole lot in ufology. Oh yes, back on the Billy Goodman happening days of where I cut my teeth on radio, a gentleman by the name of Bill English used to come on the program and relate a story of a crashed B-52 in the jungles of Vietnam where 5 crew members were in a sealed B-52. The hatches were blown, and the people who went inside discovered mutilated corpses, ladies and gentlemen, of the 5 crew members. I won't get into the graphic details, but Bill English stated that it was the classic sense of a cattle mutilation done to human beings. Another thing that is not brought up in the media of reporting UFO events. The Cosmic Connection likes to delve into these reaches that people do not touch. The Cosmic Connection is not afraid to go into areas and boundaries that people will not go into. We believe in reporting the stories. We think that you should be notified of the things that have happened, and like I've said on my programs over the past 12 years, don't believe a word I say. Do your own research, read the books, make up your own opinion. What we try and do here on the Cosmic Connection is bring you the interesting stories. Today's guest is Mr. Ron Hayes. Ron, my friend, are you on?
Oh, yes, I am.
Ron, you're calling us from where?
Huh?
Where are you calling me from, sir?
Commerce, Texas.
Commerce, Texas. Well, bless your heart, sir. You answered an email that I sent you not too long ago. Well, I think it was a long time ago. I believe I tried to contact somebody about this. Contacted you about a year ago, and you answered, and we're going to be delving into that story.
Okay.
Okay, now, this you sent me a paragraph stating some 2,300 hours I-Corps was the location. Now, I was unaware, and you're going to have to educate all of us who were not in Vietnam. I-Corps was one of 4, am I correct? And that I, or the 1 Corps, 1, 2, 3, and 4, there were 4 of these. And when you mentioned whatever, not you personally, but if somebody mentioned like 2 Corps, 3 Corps, that told the individual you were talking to just where you were stationed in Vietnam. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct.
All right. Now, what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to go down the, what river is that, sir, along the DMZ?
It's the Perfume River.
The Perfume River. And in my past 4 days of doing a lot of research and just trying to be able to keep up with you, sir, and direct the listeners in what we're talking about, Vietnam was somewhat 30 years ago, and what we're going to do is just recreate what the feel of it was, the horror, and just the dastardly deeds that happened during this conflict. I call it a conflict. It wasn't a war. It was a police action. Would you agree with me, Ron?
Yes.
All right. Sir, you have extensive background in this, and I don't want to sit here and just talk, but I do want to set up. You haven't done an interview like this, have you?
No, I have not.
All right. So I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you, sir, make this as comfortable for you as possible. I am an expert at doing this. I'm not saying that facetiously. I can understand how you must feel, and like you told me in our several conversations in the past, you just even thought of this not too long ago, and you said it was about time that you'd like to talk to us, tell us, my audience, and the veterans around the world that are listening to us. And Ron, I don't think I told you, we have some 30 countries around the world that are listening to the Cosmic Connection right now live.
Wow.
So let's start out with your background and just how you got into Vietnam.
Oh, I was had gotten out of high school.
Can you jump right into that phone there, Ron, so we can hear you?
Okay, I had gotten out of high school in Dallas, Texas, and had gone down and enlisted in the Marine Corps. That was in April of 1964. And June of 1965, we were deployed from Camp Pendleton, California, the whole 1st Marine Division, by ship to Okinawa. At that point, we picked up on the 3rd Marine Division, and all of us became what was known as the 3rd Marine Division. And we proceeded from there to the Philippines for some jungle warfare training.
Yes.
And from there straight into Chulai, Vietnam. We made the initial landing there and set up the air base and all of that for them. After that, I was transferred to I-Corps, which is outside of Da Nang.
And you were a grunt, is that correct?
No, I was a direct support for the grunt. Oh. We were about a mile behind them.
Yes.
And it was with a very light artillery unit. And it had a permanent fire base. Oh. And the grunts would come in there in the evenings, you know, and then they'd go do their thing, you know, the next day. But we supported where we were at. They come into our location, and they would rest up there, and then they would go back out the next day.
You're at a fire base.
Right.
Okay, and they come to your fire base.
Right.
Okay, and then they deploy from there.
Right.
All right. Now, are these the guns that we see that I remember as a kid watching Walter Cronkite report the news about Vietnam, these guns on wheels where they pull the cord and this thing jumps back and then the shell pops out, and then another guy with no shirt on runs up and places another one in there, and they...
That's it.
Okay.
Yep.
And what is that called?
That's 105 millimeter howitzers.
Okay, and you were in charge of these?
I was, yeah, we had there's a truck attached to each one of them, and there's 6 guns to a battery.
Okay.
And we move, when the 7th Marines move, we move. Well, let me start out by telling you how we establish a fire base, how they're normally situated. The one I was on was probably abnormal.
All right.
It was we had mountains behind us and mountains in front of us, and we was in the valley below. And usually you want the high ground, not the low ground. But that's where we were placed at. And a fire base it usually handles about 120 men, counting officers and all. And the perimeter could be about 200 yards long and probably 100 yards wide. And there would be anywhere between 8 to 15 bunkers outside this perimeter that makes up that perimeter.
Yes.
There's 3 on the front and 3 on the back and 4 on each side or something like that.
I see.
All of them are equipped with M60 machine guns, some of them with 50 caliber machine guns. All of them equipped with grenades, rocket launchers, different weapons it takes to secure that perimeter. In front of that perimeter, there is a 4-strand barbed wire fence about 50 meters out from where the bunker is. It's all the way around the entire perimeter. Once that fence is in place with that 4-strand wire, they go to the outside of that perimeter, and we roll concertina wire up against the regular fence and tie it in place.
I have the visual.
And we do the same thing on the inside.
Oh.
And then we take another roll and pyramid it up on top of those 2 and tie all that down. Inside of that, about 10 feet, is what we call a tanglefoot. Tanglefoot wire is not stationary to anything. It's something that you get into it just rolls with you and you can't get out of it.
Right.
So that was on the inside of that. There were claymore mines, flares, all different types of devices that was located in the wire.
Yes.
And it was the wire at least on our end, it was covered with cans, with rocks and stuff like that in it, so if anybody moved it at night, you could hear it.
Right.
All of us, after I got out of boot camp, are trained in the Marine Corps on what we call sound definition.
So this is an early warning detection device, so
Right.
to speak.
And what they do on this sound definition type thing is that we listen at night in training, and they may move a tank, they may move a truck, they may be digging into the ground with an entrenching tool.
Yes.
And we had to identify those sounds. Is what we had to do in our training. So we knew, basically when you heard something, where it was and where it was coming from.
Yes.
So we were all trained real good in that. And we had 3 patrols a day that we went out on, one early in the morning, one about noon, and one in the evening. And the reason for these patrols, of course, was to make sure there wasn't any enemy there. But the second thing is that we documented what we call avenues of approach to that fire base. So that when we got back at the fire base, we would take our avenues of approach and we would turn the machine gun to that area and then stick a stick underneath the barrel. Turn it to the other area and stick another stick in the barrel. And so after it got dark, we were using what they call H&Is, and that's harassment and addiction. And what they do is that every so often, we'll just turn that barrel over the top of that stick and cut loose with about 40 rounds. Go to the next one and do the same thing. And that's more or less to make sure there ain't nobody trying to come through that area.
Understood.
So it was very secure. We had a bad incident one time there where they really tested us real good, but they didn't get nowhere. But the weather over there is just steaming. I mean, it rains all the time and all that, and you have to put up with all that mud and rice paddies and leeches, and I can go on and on about that.
Sure, absolutely. And again, where you're located is you are 30 miles south of the demilitarized zone, and this is the demilitarized zone for those younger listeners out there, was an area between North and South Vietnam, am I correct?
Correct.
And what did the demilitarized zone mean in war?
Well, that was a zone that South Vietnam had already in place, if I remember right.
All right.
From the French.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure how we picked up on it now.
Yes.
We knew that it was an area, I guess the closest thing we had to it was a caisson. And that was pretty close to the DMZ there.
Yes.
But most of the activity took place across that Perfume River in the jungles and the mountains, and then off behind us in the mountains.
So your fire base was set up, and like you stated in previously, these patrols would go out during the daytime, and they would site locations of enemy, come back with you with the coordinates, and then you would just haul off and slam mortars and shells in that direction. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. We used that at certain times. We'd do that.
Yes.
And what that did, it just kind of disencourages somebody trying to move through those areas.
Right.
Is what it does.
And forgive me, sir, but what is it that you were protecting?
What we were protecting?
Yes, sir.
Ourselves.
I understand that, but in all the movies that we see about Vietnam, we see giant battles where men are losing their lives, and then 2 days later they pack up and leave. You never left this area? This was something that was done in vain.
Yeah, I only moved one time, and that was from July to the Firebase.
No kidding.
That's the only time. I was there the rest of the time. We worked out of that Firebase.
Sure.
We went out, on different operations and then come back.
Yes, that I understand, but I mean, it wasn't, you build it, you put all this resources in it, people are dead and dying, and then you just leave it there.
Yeah, no, I didn't see not a city or a town. I didn't see a town or nothing for 13 months.
Wow.
I was in a bit of that mess for the whole time I was there.
My guest is Mr. Ron Hayes. He's a veteran of the Vietnam War. We're about to get into what he saw in that, what was it, about May of 1966. He saw a craft in the demilitarized zone where something as large as he's going to describe and as low as he's going to describe had no business being. The night or the day of your operation leading up to the event that you told me about.
Okay. Well, it about from the actual sighting, about 3 or 4 weeks before that.
Yes, please.
Is when we had that massive attack that took place. And after that was all over with, it was about 4 weeks after that that I had the sighting.
Now, this massive attack, does this have something to do with the Tet Offensive?
No. Well, no, not the new Tet Offensive.
The Tet Offensive happened in what, 68?
69, I believe.
69, okay. And this is early. You're there in 1966.
Yeah, I was amongst the first that ever got there.
Sure. So you're seeing heavy fighting, and we're taking everything we can, taking it after them, huh?
Yeah, I saw my share of it.
I'll bet you did, sir. I'll bet you did. Okay, so it's a couple of weeks after this big firefight, and something strange happened.
Yeah, we were, on the bunker. We'd just filled up our canteens with coffee and everything and walked down to the bunker. That was approximately about 7, maybe 8 o'clock. And we checked everything in the bunker for the team that was leaving, make sure everything was in place. We would call back to the head of a place that was underground called the exec pit, and that's where your officers and your communications and everything is located at.
And sir, just speak up just a little bit louder. Get right into that telephone,
okay,
sir.
Yeah, the exec pit is where the officers and the communications all exist.
Yes.
And they're underground.
Okay.
And we would call back to the exec pit and request permission to test fire the machine gun to make sure everything's working.
All right.
And they'd tell us go ahead and do it or don't do it, whatever. But round about, 10 o'clock, maybe a little before, a little after, we were sitting there drinking coffee in the bunker. And I heard a noise, and it sounded like wind blowing through the trees. Well, I knew that's what it was. And so I told the guy that was with me, I said, man, we got a storm coming up, we won't quit. But I kept looking out, we had a full moon and everything.
Yes.
And, you could see down to the wire. Even at night, it was lit up.
And the time of year and the date of this event?
1966, around May.
All right.
And so we sat there probably at least 5 minutes. And it kept getting just a little louder now, and we could tell it was coming at us.
And like you told us, you had been trained to hear perimeter sounds.
Right.
And this was something that you weren't used to.
Right. And so I told the Marine that was with me, I said, man, it's got to be one heck of a storm coming in here. But you could see, and see there wasn't nothing there.
Right.
Well, a couple of minutes after that, the cans in the wire went to rattling. Like somebody was trying to get through the wire.
Yes.
And we could look down at the wire from the bunker, and there wasn't anybody in it. It was just moving around and rattling. And that's when the moon went just totally black. So we run out the back side of the bunker, and we had our weapons with us, too, at this time, and looked up, and we caught the leading front end of it coming in over us.
Wow.
And on the starboard side, which is your left side there, we caught the edge all the way back from there. And from underneath it, as far as we could see, was nothing but black. This thing was huge. If I was guessing, I'd say it was somewhere around 75 meters, probably, or 70 meters at least.
Yes.
Because it blacked out that whole sky.
In diameter.
Right.
And to ask you again, this is around 10 o'clock at night. Obviously, there's no daylight savings time or something like that, but is there a little bit of light out, or is it just black, dark?
Oh, no, we had like I said, we had a full moon and everything.
Okay.
And so, when you're out in a place like that where you don't have no smog or anything like
sure,
that, you can light up an area at night pretty easy.
Yes.
The moon stuff.
Yes. All right, so you see this craft, you're thinking enemy?
No. Because we, by the time this sighting took place, we were pretty seasoned. And we know that the enemy didn't have aircraft that would be where we're at.
So
you
were hunkered down in your bunker, you see this thing coming, and you left your bunker, your post area, ran outside up onto ground level, and you're looking at this object that you had heard make this noise.
Correct.
Okay, so, and it's just you and your buddy. There's two of you there.
at that time.
So, did you just open up and fire on it?
No, we didn't do that. I asked him after it was all over with how come he didn't shoot. He told me, he asked me how come I didn't shoot. I told him the heaviest thing we had was a 7.62 rifle, and there's
Yes.
no way in the world I was going to shoot at something like that, because it may get offended. So
Well,
we never made an attempt whatsoever to shoot at it.
did you state to one another, do you see that, or were you
Yeah,
just...
we were standing there talking
Okay.
and pointing at it as it went over.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I recall, Ron, when I had my sighting that started this whole career of mine, I had a sighting, and I grabbed him by the shoulder. I said, do you see this? What do you think it was that you saw on your initial sighting of it? What?
Well, from what I could tell after it was all over, what we done is that, which is not uncommon, is, like a squad going into a patrol or anything like that. Once you're back into your area, each man sits down and tells the other what he saw or heard.
Yes.
And that way everybody has their report there, and they'll know, we can tell by looking at that if somebody saw something that I didn't see, or, vice versa, and we can pretty well tell that we all did the same thing at the same time, the right way, and everything.
Right.
And everything checks out.
Well, what did it look like? Could you see any details of the craft?
Yeah, the craft was round. The only thing I could not tell about the craft was the height, because it was so big I couldn't see the top.
Sure.
It did not rotate or move.
Oh.
It glided, and it would about 200 feet off the ground, I guess, not very far. And it couldn't have been going more than about 10 miles an hour. I mean, this thing, it took almost 10 seconds, 8 to 10 seconds to cross the perimeter where we were at.
Right.
I mean, it was big.
Yeah.
And like I say, it was solid black, and that's not black like from the night. I mean, this thing was black. It was made to be black.
Sure.
And
no lights or
no
running
lights
lights?
whatsoever.
Yeah.
And after it was all over with, we were talking, and I said, this thing came in the way to come in the way it did. It had to come over the mountains in front of us and drop down, and then come down past us and go back up again to get over the mountains behind us.
Right.
So at that time, underneath there, radar probably didn't even detect it. At that time.
Yes.
I mean, we didn't have radar back then like they got now, anyhow.
I got to ask you, from which direction did it come from? Did it come from the enemy side?
It came from the enemy side.
Yes.
And it came from over there and crossed right across the right hand or the starboard side of our fire base, and that's where I was sitting.
Now, is your
and
terrain...
2 other Marines reported it at the back end as it passed over them.
Okay. Now, is your terrain, is it jungle, or is it some, flat dirt with bushes and then jungle?
Well, about 100 yards out from the bunkers is all flat.
Yes.
On the other side of that is trees and jungle and stuff like that.
Right. And then way behind that would be the hills or a river?
The Perfume River.
Yes. Is that where that was?
It was on down the road about 4 miles, maybe 3 or 4 miles.
And so you heard this, the noise emanating or being made 10 minutes, approximately, you state, 10 minutes before you saw the object.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, we could hear it, and it sounded exactly like a rushing wind going through the trees.
Yes.
But when it got to us, as slow as it was going, I could tell why it took so long to get to us.
But there was no wind, just the sound of wind.
Just the sound.
Holy smokes.
That's all we had. It had some wind when it went over the wire because it rattled the cans. But when it got underneath us or over us, there wasn't nothing picked up off the ground or anything.
Now, what someone might say was this would be North Vietnamese Army helicopters.
No. It was literally impossible for it to be a helicopter. Literally impossible. And the reason I say that is because you can hear them.
Yes.
Every helicopter's got a motor in it, so you're going to hear them. It wasn't a jet airplane. They got an engine on them, and they couldn't fly at 10 miles an hour if they had to. At 200 feet off the ground, they'd fall. And it wasn't a drone, and we did have drones in in those, back during that period of time.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with Mr. Ron Hayes. He was located in the DMZ in North Vietnam, in the middle of Vietnam, I should say, in 1966. In May of 1966, he was in charge of a Firebase, and he's telling us about an object that had no business being where it was. Ron, are you there, my friend?
Yes, I am.
All right. Sir, again, I commend you for coming on our program. This is the first, I guess, you've been interviewed and spoken about this. How do you feel, sir?
Well, like it's 39 years, and I've never told anybody about it other than, my wife. And of course, she didn't believe it either.
Sure.
I reported the incident to the executive officer and stuff the same night, and they just made a joke out of it and kind of laughed it off.
Well, get right there in that microphone, sir, so we can all hear every word you have to say.
All right.
You're doing a good job, sir. You're articulate. You're covering all the bases and helping me out here. Has anybody ever? Well, I guess nobody's ever approached you except for me with all these history channels and on these war programs. I was interested in the association of UFOs in Vietnam. Have you heard anything other than the story that you've related, and still relating? We're not done yet.
No, as far as I know, I'm the only one that reported anything out of Vietnam.
Okay. And also, sir, did you report this to any superiors? Are you aware of a document called GenApp 146?
No.
Okay. GenApp 146 is a communications instruction form for reporting vital intelligence sightings from airborne, waterborne sources and ground, and is effective upon receipt and supersedes communications called GenApp 146B. And what this states, I'll just put it in layman's terms and in short form. This is a form that if someone were to see something like you did, they were to immediately submit themselves for detention to where you would have no legal background. This is something that I've heard of many, many years ago when I was first getting into looking over this whole UFO phenomenon. NAP 146, of the many military people that I've interviewed in the past decade of Cosmic Connection, all state that this Joint Chiefs of Staff Joint Communications and Electronics Committee, GenApp, states that they had to fill this out and submit it to a person